All right, today we are going to have a fun telco conversation with my friends from Vodafone. Alena, it's good to see you. It's been since what, Berlin?
It's been a couple of months, but it seems to be, just a short time because I'm looking forward for the next SPCT call, which is coming up.
Don't remind me of that. Oh my God. Okay, so you freaked me out twice already. So I agree with you. I can't believe that. So for me, it feels like July's already over. Right. So July just started. I got back from Singapore. I got thrown into quarterly business review. I got thrown into PI planning this week. And then I'm doing what I'll call, and it's going to freak my European friends out, a working vacation next week. Because I feel like I need to work and I feel bad about taking that time off. So I'll be doing that. And then I blink my eyes and I come back and it's August. And I don't know how that happened. I don't know how we went from like Q1 to just where we're at now. It's nuts.
The speed of change is accelerating, right?
I don't understand. Every time it seems as though with every year I get older, the rate of time just magnifies tenfold. Like it's nuts. I think about my nieces are getting ready to go back to school, and I think about when I was in school and we had grading periods that were 6 weeks long. And I used to think, oh my God, that is so long. And I used to be like 4 weeks in thinking like, I still have 2 weeks. I'll get my grades right. And then now just 6 weeks is like, it's no time at all. It's none. And then I remember when they wanted to switch to 9 weeks and I thought, well, that's just ridiculous. That's such a large amount of time. And I now know to the teachers that were the age that I am now, they're like, yeah, you're ridiculous. This is no time. At any rate, so here we are. Alena, your journey's been really cool. It's been really impressive to get to know you over the years with your SBCT journey. It's been cool to see all of the things that you've been able to with Vodafone. And I want to get into all of that. But I would like to first have you introduce the person who I believe you're building in your image. Would you please introduce us to our other guest on this here podcast episode?
Yeah, with pleasure. I would like to introduce Silke Eggert, our head of Lean Portfolio Management and Transformation team as part of Digital and IT within Vodafone. And I joined Silke's team 2 years ago because I was really inspired by the vision to drive Lean Portfolio Management implementation on such a large scale for 16,000 employees within Digital and IT organizations. So Silke, it would be great to hear from you today.
Thank you so much, Adam and Alena. I'm really happy to be here, and I can only resonate with the fact that time is just flying by. So when I look back at my career at Vodafone, I have managed to spend 19 years almost with Vodafone, and it just happened in a blink of an eye, it seems. So far, I've definitely been in a very prestigious position, to have enjoyed a very rich and diverse career. I have worked the first 7 years at Vodafone Germany, started off as a department head in B2B marketing, and via a huge transformation program, which I took from a cradle to grave, I moved to technology. And then in 2013, I made the step away from the local market in Germany and joined Vodafone Group Services, with the exception of 2 years, which I've spent then in another local market in the Netherlands for Vodafone Ziggo, our joint venture between Vodafone and Liberty. I have been in technology since 2008 or 9, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, so I'm really happy to be here. My own path and journey in the lean agile transformation space probably started a bit later than yours, Alena. But I still remember that at the time, having represented business requirements towards our IT organization, and often having felt a lot of frustration that my requirements were not met at pace, and would mean having to invest significantly. For me, it was a light bulb moment that there is a different way to slice the elephant, and that there is so much power in working in a cross-functional team. And just think MVP, just think starting small, scaling fast. So this is me, and this is my passion for this space.
So I'm curious, in the earlier part of your career, did you ever happen to hear of either HO systems or the VeriSign billing and OSS platform?
No,
I'm guessing
I
by the look
haven't.
on your face, no.
The VeriSign billing and OSS platforms.
Yeah. So when I
that?
first got out of the military, my first gig was with VeriSign. So they had just purchased. It was a wireless billing platform. It was a billing and OSS platform for wireless providers. It was called HO Systems, based in Savannah, Georgia, and they provided billing services for the vast majority of U.S. telco providers and some in Europe. I wasn't sure. I don't recall which. It's been a minute. But the whole point to that is it's kind of cool that we've got that in common. My first experience to any of this was with wireless billing or wireless providers in the early to mid 2000s, and my job was VeriSign had purchased HO systems, and we had to integrate. So I had the mission of creating architectural elegance for some very disparate systems and the way businesses operate. One was garage business. The other was, at the time it felt like an old startup. It was 5 years old, but now I think, man, a 5-year-old company is not that old. But yeah, it was a really cool time. I learned a lot about switch engineering and just a lot of the back office functions that make cellular work. And I thought it was so cool then. So it's neat that we all have that. And just for future reference, nobody needs to put years on anything.
Yeah.
We don't have
it's
to.
Good. It's good to have something in common. My world centered around the BSS systems, so which sit above the OSS systems. So I have been more dealing with vendors like MDocs in the business support systems world and landscape, which is complex as well. Yeah. And very interesting how telcos provide the provisioning, the billing, and the customer care and customer relationship management towards their customers. It's really the bloodline of a telco business for sure.
What really impresses me is how fast everything happens, right? Like if you think of, standing in a Vodafone store, right? Say you buy a new phone. Really just how fast you can go from filling out an application to an application being approved, to your phone being provisioned, the phone works, you can get text messages. I think if you're a customer and you're standing there in the store and you're like, oh my gosh, this is taking 15 minutes. That's really quite remarkable, right? The amount of things that happen in that time with pretty darn good accuracy, right? It's such an impressive industry. And I don't think people really realize what it is. You take your phone for granted, right? When I landed in Singapore recently, I turned my phone on. It knew who I was, where I was, had offered me a data plan, like within seconds of turning it on. And it's absolutely unreal. And I think people just take for granted that their phones work and they don't really realize all that goes into making it work.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. Yeah, it's taken as for granted. It's definitely something where we have very high standards and expectations and need to meet them on a daily basis. Absolutely.
100%. Alena, let's kick it back to you. For those that don't know the amazing Alena, please introduce yourself. And you do have a reputation in this space. I want you to know. Everyone knows who you are, and you're very well respected in our little community.
Thank you. It's great to hear it from you, Adam, and I'm super happy to be part of this community and really to contribute to the future of SAFE. But some words about myself. I'm very passionate about driving digital transformation with Lean and Agile principles, and my journey started, my Agile journey started very, very early in startup environment in a big company, Daimler or Mercedes, where I was part of their innovation hub, Lab 1886 or Daimler Business Innovation, where we were developing prototypes for future business models, future products, right? For example, Car2Go, which is a car sharing startup, or Mercedes-Benz Rent, which is a premium rental services, and many more. And we were testing these business ideas in a very, very short time, improving them based on customer feedback. And for me, it was, wow, such a big company can be so innovative and so fast. And I was expecting that it is the reality also with the core company. So I joined Mercedes as part of the program, and realized that this was really a special world. right, where I was at the beginning. And the traditional company is still on a very, very long journey towards being so fast and respond to feedback in a very fast way. I was in marketing and sales, and it was only as I moved to the US a couple of years ago when I started really dedicating my time back to the agility, where I was part of launching the first Agile release train within Mercedes-Benz Financial, and helping to set up digital transformation center, digital solution center, how we call it at that time. And my journey continued in automotive within a supplier, Aptiv, which is one of the largest suppliers in autonomous driving division, where I really learned the hardcore of how challenging it is to transform the embedded systems, which was very, very challenging and rewarding journey. A lot of impediments and a lot of challenges on the way to really create an end-to-end system, which is fast enough to deliver the value very, very incrementally, in spite of the hardware cycles. And after that, I supported one of the other car makers, Porsche, on their journey. And since 2 years, I'm part of Silke's team as part of Lean Portfolio Management and Transformation as head of Lean and Agile Center of Excellence, and being an internal change agent and helping to enable Vodafone towards more business agility or towards advancing on this journey.
So real quick, I want to give a shout out to Riverside, which is the platform that we use, because you broke up a little bit, Alena, and I think I saw Silke think, but what's so cool about this platform is that while we're sitting here and there might be some latency, it records locally and uploads to the cloud. So that little glitch that I just saw, no one's ever going to see it again. To them, it didn't happen. And it's a really cool part of this platform. So after that segue,
really cool.
I want to go back and ask a question. So I heard you say digital transformation with regard to Vodafone. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that always strikes me as interesting. And I think, Silke, I want to kind of point this to you a little bit, right? When I think of a telco, when I think of a wireless provider, when I think of like what I'll call wireless native, I almost think digital native. And I say that because if you think of like a Bell telephone or an AT&T, their legacy is telephone wires, operators in an operating center, right? I mean, it's a very old school model for delivering communications. But when I think about a wireless provider, right, someone that's been doing that for a very long time, I would think in my brain that, well, that's a digital company. You have to get digital. So what is it about a company like Vodafone that needs to go through some sort of a digital transformation? I mean, where are you starting from, and where are you trying to get to?
Yeah, it's interesting that you expect us to almost be a digital native, because we are not. Yeah, so compared to the big technology platform companies, we certainly are not. Actually, what we have, and this is what a lot of telcos have in common, we have a lot of legacy systems. We have also gone through a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So we have not only grown the business organically, but also through acquisitions. And with every single acquisition, did the complexity in our stacks increase. So it's most of the time a rather complicated, complex landscape. And unfortunately, there's a huge investment also required to help change, simplify, and modernize that. So this is definitely a big strategic intent to modernize, to rationalize legacy, to simplify, and to provide the best possible digital customer experience. It doesn't go for granted. So for quite a few years, has there been a big focus on using customer journeys and with a view, how can we digitize them? How can we make it as simple as possible? How can we create an omni-channel experience so that the customer really can decide, do I go to a retail store? Do I find something on the web? Or do I use an app? So we actually have also invested significantly in what we've referred to as one app, which is one application which harmonizes user journeys and can then be rolled out to multiple markets. So pleased to hear that in your view, we were a bit more advanced, but it has taken quite a huge effort and it will continue to do so. And definitely, I mean, this is where we have all seen the mission criticality of telcos. The pandemic almost seems gone, but this was certainly also a big moment for the telco industry as such, to prove how mission critical our infrastructure was for the entire world to stay connected and to further build out that digital society aspect.
That's so right. And what I think is most interesting about what you just said is that you inadvertently hit on my two areas that I typically jump on a soapbox for, right? Which is elegant architecture, right? Modular architecture. And we see that a lot, right? I mean, companies grow fast. They do mergers, but they forget to integrate. Right. So we either buy you or we merge with you, and that's great. And then we look at the bottom line and we forget to do all of the dirty work, which is the integration. The worst one I ever saw was we were doing a conceptual diagram for a company. They'd been around for close to 50 years, and they had grown from nothing to one of the largest companies in the world. And when we got done with the conceptual diagram, it was over 280,000 interconnected applications. Some of them we were paying people to run because we just didn't know what would happen if we turned it off, right? So that whole modularization of architecture, it allows us to do a lot of things. It helps us move faster. But what I really love that you said is the reference to experience architecture. And I think that is one of the most important things, because as customers, we're all fickle now, right? We are so demanding of a quality interaction. And I think as a business, we owe it to ourselves to curate and be intentional about all of those interactions. And I really love how you mentioned that, you know, Vodafone's got like this macro perspective, right? So no matter whether you're doing an app transaction, a web transaction, or a store transaction, you know it's a Vodafone transaction, right? You have similarities that let you know that, hey, you're a Vodafone customer. The touch points, the colors, like those things have a commonality. And then that provides guardrails for, hey, this is who we are. These are the experiences that our customers must have. This is how we want them to leave feeling. Now adapt that to your unique context. I absolutely love that you guys are going down that path.
Thank you.
So, Alena, let's talk a little bit about your transition, because you came from some pretty heavy businesses. Like when you talk about building cars, and you know, I'll give a nod to Mercedes specifically. I mean, I did some work in Stuttgart. I did a short-term engagement with AMG, which led me to come home and buy an AMG, because I'm a car guy. That was literally the worst. I think the only worst place for me to go would be Porsche, because you can still buy an AMG Mercedes and not go broke. You can't really buy a fast Porsche and not go broke. Like, I don't make that kind of money. But man, if I worked there, I'd figure it out. I'd figure out. I might not eat, but man, I'd have a nice Porsche. So, but going from those very, and look, let's be honest, when you think of German auto engineering, that is the most disciplined thing that most people can think of when it comes to engineering. They're precise. I've got a Mercedes downstairs, actually directly below me right now. It's 10 years old. It's got 130,000 miles on it. And it runs as good today as the day that it was new. And is it expensive to maintain? Sure. I mean, yeah, I just did a transmission oil filter change, and I think it was $3,000 US. But because I did that, it'll probably run for another 200,000 miles. So let's talk about how you kind of moved from, and what you learned from those very disciplined auto engineering spaces, and then how that applied to the work that you do today, and how you really focused on helping Vodafone, and especially in their portfolio space.
Wow, it's a difficult question, but let me try to answer, Adam. So from the experience working in automotive, especially in the embedded system environment and especially in supplier space, the challenging part was really to make the concepts tangible, because we say all the time we need to have agile mindset, but for engineers it's really not enough. You cannot just present principles and some values and say, now we will build the car or the autonomous driving system using those principles. They will look at you, no. We need, as you mentioned, right? We need our heavy processes. We need to comply to a lot of regulations. The car needs to be safe. So what we learned in our transformation team is that we paired Agile principles with tooling and processes from the very beginning. So in our team, we had some experts on the tooling side to establish the traceability so that the architecture or the requirements which we now put into the features rather than individual requirements, that we have the traceability chain so that when the customer is buying the systems, we still can prove that some of the safety critical items are traced back to a specific architectural element or a specific feature, how we call it. So tooling and processes was a very important part. We also worked on modernizing the whole product development process and saying, okay, we have those milestones. We will not remove them in a day, but how can we still make the time between the milestones much more flexible? How can we, for example, have this high-level design be so high-level that we still have the flexibility in the implementation rather than really knocking all these 10,000 requirements and sometimes 10 million requirements and then just have a burn-down chart of all the requirements. And if you realize when the last requirement is actually the most critical where you need to redesign the whole system, then something went wrong in the process. So we tried to really make the times between the milestones more flexible. What we also did with regards to your favorite topic of modular architecture, we piloted the MBA, model-based engineering.
MBSE.
Yeah, MBSE. Yeah. Sorry. We piloted it.
Engineering, for those of you that are like, what are they talking about?
Exactly. And I think for very heavy engineering products, our approach was to take something which we're building from scratch. It is super difficult, as Silke mentioned, when you're building something on a legacy architecture and you're trying a new approach, you still need to connect what you're building to all the 100 stacks behind. So what we were trying to pilot this approach was a real complete new system where we can do it from the very beginning and create the modules and also consider the behaviors, for example, driver looking up front, driver looking to the side, and really decompose it based on behaviors rather than specific requirements. This worked very well for us, but it was still, the challenge was in integrating this new product within all the landscape of the legacy systems, right? And reuse the architecture from the previous generation, because as you mentioned in your example, sometimes you just don't know what will happen if you shut down one system, right? Because the last person building it already left the company and it was 10 years ago. So the challenges on the automotive side were really to bring together the security requirements and traceability part with agile mindset and help with tooling so that the concepts of agility are practical and we can teach engineers and train engineers. This is a feature. This is how it would look in a tool. This is how you would trace it to the architecture. And this is what you need to considering while developing so that you still have the traceability and all the security requirements there.
Well, in what you said, there's so much importance to what you said. And I feel like there's a lot of well-intended consultants that don't have the context to really help an organization do the things that you just said. I think the first thing that you said was that mindset, values, and principles aren't enough, right? And they're not. They're absolutely not. But they're a foundation. They're a foundation that helps us get to where we want to go. But you also mentioned the criticality of, especially in an automotive context or in an example of a telco where it needs to be able to do all of the things that we first said when we were talking to Silke in terms of turn the phone on, new account, it works. And then also like something bad has happened. How do we assure connectivity around the world? You can't just scrum your way through that with total team autonomy and hope for the best. Like, we mentioned the importance of modular architecture. It is critically important for that because in the example I gave before, we don't want to turn that thing off because we don't know what's going to happen. In the context of telco or in the context of automotive, you need to know exactly what's going to happen when you turn that thing off so you can have fail-safes in place. So, when we talk about agility, when we talk about moving faster, we all recognize, and no one's going to argue that that's important. Nobody's going to argue that we want to have flexibility. We want to have empowered teams. But for most of the things that most companies build, there's a level of safety that's required that I think a lot of folks just don't have the exposure to really understand. So like if you take that beyond automotive, you take that beyond telco, you think of healthcare. My wife's healthcare system was just hacked. I mean, they were a victim of a ransomware attack, but they were proactive enough that they had enough redundancy in place that, maybe they couldn't do billing and payroll, but nobody died, right? And that's the most important thing. So when we talk about why we do what we do, we want to remain competitive. We want to be able to take advantage of all the most important technologies and trends that come to market. But there's a responsibility beyond just that. And, when we look at big companies, when we look at some of the most critical companies in the world, people need to understand that. So yes, we want to talk mindset, values, and principles. And yes, we want autonomous teams. And yes, we want decentralized decision-making and modular architecture and all those things. But it comes with rigor, right? It comes with, we have a responsibility and we need to be very deliberate and intentional about how we do it. Does that mean that we can't do it faster and better? Absolutely not. And that's what you both are figuring out. But I really hope that people also understand that it's not as easy as some folks would have you believe. It's not so easy as just coming in and letting teams self-form and saying, now you own this product, now you own that product, and it's clean and done, and let's go. There's a lot that goes into getting to that point. And even if you do get to that point, there's still so much responsibility and so much that has to be built in to assure customer safety and system continuity in the face of something bad happening. Those are the most important things when we think of any company like the size of some of the ones that you mentioned or Vodafone is, yes, we have to deliver an amazing experience to our customers. Yes, we have to deliver the latest and greatest. But above all of that, we must deliver on the confidence that when you pick up your device, it's going to work. So, I sit here and I listen to the both of you talk, and that's such an important responsibility. And you two are both on the leading edge of trying to figure out, how do we blend these worlds? So, I mean, Silke, you've been around Vodafone for, I don't want to quote your timeline, but we'll just say a few years. What has been the hardest thing in guiding your organization down that path? Just from the old ways of working where we had maximum traceability, maximum assurance of all of the safety protocols to a place where we have to move faster. What are the challenges you've seen?
Yeah, there have been quite a few, as I'm sure you can imagine. And I have personally found the things which roll off very easily from the tongue to be really super hard. Yeah, so let's start with make work visible. It sounds so easy. It's so natural to understand what the value of this would entail. It has actually proven to be super difficult because we have gone through significant change. Alena already alluded to the fact that we have created this pan-European digital IT organization, 16,000 people. So when I started in my role in April 2021, I was a single woman show, and I really had to think hard. What can I do? What can I, as one individual, with help, of course, that was provided, but what can I realistically do? Where do I start? How do I define my MVP? Because it was very clear that I could not stand a chance to make all the work which is happening across this huge organization, multiple markets visible. Just to also mention what I eventually decided to do is to focus on those global initiatives which were meant to drive reusability, which would support standardization, simplification, and try to align them better with local market priorities. So this was the MVP which I defined for myself. Another thing which really proves hard and has proven to be difficult is organize people around value. It sounds easy. It's really difficult, specifically when you are coming from an organization which still focuses on reporting lines, which gives structure. Yeah, so we all learn, yes, they are needed. The organization needs to be in a steady state, in a stable environment. People need to be given this environment in which they have confidence and faith, but then you should seek at ways how they create value to a customer and to reorganize them cross-functionally. that has really proven to be difficult, and it still does, because this means at times looking at local market people, matching them up with people who have a global role, such as Alena and myself, bringing into the mix vendors, external vendors, so they have also a very critical role to play, that we also expect them to change their ways of working, how they contract, how they offer their commercials. So that has also proven to be a challenge. And I could carry on. And of course, what I don't want to leave behind is the impression none of this has been possible. So for instance, one thing which I really think was a major breakthrough is that in our environment, we have actually been able to pilot and to run a participatory budgeting event. And this really left a big aha moment almost in the community, because it so fundamentally changed the way we address funding decisions. It is playful. We were able to do it at CXO level and to engage the CIOs of all those local markets. This was really fantastic. And it just showed that once you have got this executive sponsorship behind something you try to do differently, things can also work in such an established and well-run organization such as Vodafone. So challenges, yes, but also opportunities and quick wins.
While I'm sitting in the studio today, I thought I'd take a minute to talk to you about Safe Studio, a game-changing platform for learning and practicing safe, no matter where you are in your safe journey. Picture this. Your team streamlined like never before with common self-paced learning and the right assets at the right time, all at their fingertips. Safe Studio isn't just a tool, it's a breakthrough in aligning your team's effort with your big picture goals. And we've all been there. You go to a training class and you leave with all this energy and great ideas, but you get back to your desk on Monday and you're a little bit lost about how to apply all of that great content to your context. Well, Safe Studio helps you avoid that ambiguity by providing clarity, efficiency, and most importantly, resources to help you hit the ground running in your new way of working. But Safe Studio doesn't stop there. You'll also find tools to connect to the greater Scaled Agile community, simplified course management in the virtual classroom, access to all of our platforms like piplanning.io, comparative agility, and others. You'll find templates to facilitate product development activities and safe events, along with toolkits, video tutorials, and good gracious, so much more. Check out Safe Studio today and see for yourself at safe.scaledagile.com. Now, back to the show. Well, I think the most important thing about what you highlighted, though, is the journey, right? I think too many people will come in and expect massive change to happen quick. And can it happen? Sure. If the CEO gets on stage with the board and says, we're doing X by Y, go, and everyone's aligned, sure, but that's not realistic for most organizations. A lot of what you said describes so much that so many organizations go through. So you think of a company like Vodafone where you have decades worth of engineering and people and projects and problems that were solved. That means you also have a lot of business as usual work that people do on a day-to-day basis that keeps the organization running that nobody really thinks about. So when you talk about, well, step one, make all work visible. If somebody asked you to sit down and make all of the work you do in a day visible, the things that you do that you don't even think about, I mean, that's a lot, right? That's a lot to start with. And then when you talk about organizing around value, the same thing comes into play. When you start looking at how many different things every individual person touches, organize around value is a great idea. But the general architecture of the organization and the social fabric of the organization is messy, right? Like there's little fingers that go everywhere. So I think what's important to remember there is that we want to start with a mindset that says we want to organize around value and we want to do our best with where we are today. And I think that's where a lot of people get hung up. They have this idealistic picture of what organizing around value should look like. And then there's the reality of where we are today, and they forget to bridge the gap, right? So we start where we're at. We do our best with the constraints that we have. And then when we have this deliberate focus on things like automation, things like improving architectural elegance, well, then we can reorganize around the new value that we have and the new structure that we have. And you iterate towards this place where things get a lot better. But that takes time. It takes deliberate effort. It takes investment in your systems and in your architecture and in your business operations to go back to this idea of we want to be faster. And if you remember back in Leading Safe, we used to have this video of an IndyCar race. And the first was an IndyCar or an Indy 500 pit stop in like the 1950s. And it took a minute and change. And then you fast forward to 2013 and it took like 7 seconds. And you don't get there by hoping. You get there by saying, our goal is to go faster. We're going to intentionally make investments that allow us to do pit stops faster. And that requires changing the architecture of the car. That requires building new tools. That requires getting new team skills. But none of that happens overnight. You weren't going to go from a minute plus pit stop in 1950 to a 17-second pit stop in 1951. It's not going to happen. So I think the journey that you talked about, Silke, is what's so important, right? We understand where we want to go. We understand the principles and the tools and the concepts that will get us there, but we have to move together and engineer intentionally along the way. And I think that's so important, and people really need to accept that reality. It doesn't happen overnight. And the other thing that I want to hear more about is, what was the cultural shift that needed to take place in a company that, has been around for a while to create a dynamic that allows participatory budgeting to happen? Because I'm guessing, again, that didn't happen overnight. I mean, Alena, what was maybe some of the first things that were said to you when this concept was brought up?
Wow. So I think it was really courageous for Silke to start this experiment after watching just a webinar, right, with Phil and with Dimar, where they were discussing participatory budgeting. And Silke was able to convince our CTO or CEO of Vodafone at that time to run this experiment. So I think, as she mentioned, this stakeholder buy-in or the top leadership buy-in for the experiment and phrasing it as an experiment was very, very important from the very beginning. We didn't say we need to implement it by the book or in a very specific quality which is perfect. We phrase it as MVP, as an experiment, and if we are not happy with the results, we will adjust the results or the priorities based on some other instruments if this one proved not to be true. Right. So the stakeholder and top leadership buy-in, I think, was very crucial. And the preparation at the time, maybe Silke can say more about the preparation, because I was not yet joining the Vodafone. But the preparation, dry runs, and rigid, really structure which we created for ourselves to be prepared ourselves, right? Because it was also the first time for the whole team doing it. This was very important, and the courage also to bring initiatives and expose also not only the work, make the work visible, but expose or make the challenges visible, right? Because through the first participatory budgeting, we exposed so many maybe topics, challenges, or impediments which were buried somewhere, and it was really easy to hide. And now they were so visible that people need to talk about them, right? But I'm sure, Silke, as you was in your first PB, maybe you can say some words about those first initial things which we exposed to everyone through our first PB exercise.
Absolutely.
Well, and so I got to ask before you jump into that. I mean, so I would approach it from this idea of, wouldn't it be cool if, hey, CIO, wouldn't it be cool if we could have a budget planning conversation where we had less politicking and more focus on the work that we're doing and what's most valuable for the company? Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, is that kind of the approach that you took, or like, how did you even get an okay to, because look, let's be honest, the people that are in that room, you've got a lot of type A people with strong opinions that want to win. And that's just the reality. Like, when you get to that level of decision making, those are the personalities you typically have. So how did you, like, what levers did you pull to get the okay to just run that experiment?
Yeah, I remember it very vividly, as if it had happened yesterday. So we actually were at an extended technology leadership conference. So this is about 80 people, senior people across our technology organization from multiple countries and global functions. being together in a room. So this was still during the pandemic. We all enjoyed being in a room. And a big focus topic of that conference at the time was prioritization and the acknowledgement that we are operating in a space where there is so much more demand than available capacity. Not something unusual. I'm sure everyone who's listening will resonate with that. Yeah. So we have got far more ideas than available capacity, both in people and money. And I happened to talk to our group CTO and IT director and said, Scott, what do you think about piloting something new? There is this concept of a participatory budgeting event. It comes from the public sector. It's actually a good way to identify and define priorities. Are you up for it? And he immediately said, yeah. I am. Let's give it a try. And then, as Alena already said, it was super. Sorry, I now think lost was frozen.
No, remember, Riverside,
yes,
you're perfect.
Fantastic.
Nobody ever knew it hung up.
Okay, that is such a great platform. It was really important to get his full executive sponsorship because he is a strong stakeholder. So people are looking at him. And since he embraced the opportunity full-heartedly and also said, we will be crawling together. We will be learning together. We will use this as an experiment. It won't be perfect, but we will just try to make it work. This was fundamental. And then the heavy lifting started, as Alena said, because it requires a lot of preparation. Given that our budget is not organized in a way that you could say we have got a portfolio clearly defined, that portfolio has budget available to itself, we really had to make it work in our environment. You mentioned this earlier, Adam, how important it is to make it work in your environment. And we had to identify which initiatives, which epics do we even want to scrutinize? And then it certainly generated so many bucket loads of learning. One is dependency. It was the first time that the CIOs in a room actually started to ask themselves, what comes first? Is there even a dependency amongst the initiatives? What do we have to have in place before we initiate something else? So this was a great insight. Then also the fact, and they learned very fast, that it's very unfavorable if you size your epics too large. We had extra large epics. So, and very quickly did the epic owners understand, wow, if I cut this smaller, I actually stand a much better chance to get some funding. And that funding might take me up to the next participatory budgeting event, just to name two really light bulb moments, which we generated from a very playful activity.
Out of curiosity, through the preparation and conversation, were you able to identify any duplicative efforts where maybe two CIOs were working on a very similar initiative where they could combine?
Yes, that was also a side effect and a good conversation to be had to actually say, wait a minute, do we really need to do this, or isn't there an opportunity to develop ones and deploy many? So this was also a side effect. What I also wouldn't want to underestimate is to get my own team, myself included, behind this concept. Because I must say, having seen the video on the council participatory budgeting planning event, which is on Safe Studio, I don't remember, in San Jose, if I remember correctly, it really took some effort for us as a team to go through the process ourselves. And we did this in a very playful way. So we decided, let's organize a party. So this is something everyone can relate to. And then we had got difficult epics. Some were far too big. And we had to, as a team, plan what we wanted to prioritize and how we wanted to invest our funds. And then we offered this also throughout getting ready for the actual event to the participating team to just get them into the mode of understanding what we will ask them to do and how this whole process works. And still, before we started, we had one or two voices who suggested, do we even need to do it? And we said, yes, we still need to do it because we want to have those conversations and we want you to find good arguments why you think one priority needs to be given to something else over something, which is competing with the same fund.
So there's two things that I want to pull out of what you just said that I think are so important that if you're not listening, maybe folks miss. One, what I can kind of pick out is the culture of Vodafone. You've mentioned a few times fun, right? The organization allows itself to experiment and allows itself to have fun. And I think that's so important. And there's a lot of folks that talk about the importance of play and people think, oh, well, that's hokey. We can't do that in the workplace, but it's so important. You've got to be able to allow yourself to experiment, to make mistakes, to laugh, and to come together in that space. It does so much to bring any group of people together. The second thing that you mentioned is people often talk about, well, why do you go to conferences? Why is it so important? And I think, the point that you just made around, well, we heard it as a conference. Well, and you're right. Maybe Alena goes to a conference, she hears something and she brings it back and she tells you about it, but you weren't there. So you're like, meh. But when you go to those things together and you can hear them together and you can talk about those new ideas together away from the office, really cool things happen, right? There's just something about being together and being around a group of people who have similar challenges, hearing concepts, hearing ideas, hearing stories, and being able to immediately in the moment debrief and make decisions that's so powerful, right? I mean, I've been at a lot of conferences in my day, and just the things that I see and the ahas that people have and the things they can do because they're together are just, it's super cool. So I wanted to call that out. And back on the culture point, before I throw it back to you both to close out, I believe I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day that you are looking for a coach.
Yes, we do.
So
we are looking for
a really cool culture. Well, by golly, here you go. That was my best American, by the way, by golly. That really shows you where I grew up.
Yes, Adam, we are looking for an Agile coach in our UK, one of the UK location in Newbury and Paddington. So if you know someone who is interested, please let us know.
Absolutely.
And also, if I may add, we are looking for a senior manager for our Agile portfolio operations team. So unfortunately, with the sad eye, I see that the person currently holding the role is moving on, which is great. Yeah, so it's a sad eye and a happy eye, and that's another great opportunity to join our team.
Opportunities all around. I love that. So to kind of close us out, what do you think is the number one tip that you would give a leader in your shoes? Somebody that is maybe sitting in your chair 4 or 5 years ago, looking where you're at now and having the opportunity to look in the rearview mirror and having that gift of hindsight. What do you think is the most powerful tip you could offer someone?
I'm happy to give it a start, Alena, if you're all right. My tip would be bold and courageous. It takes a bold step. It takes this courage to do things differently. And I would couple that with accepting that not everything will go smoothly, but it's still worthwhile doing it. Perhaps as a leader myself, I've always seen that leading by example and always leading by example and again leading by example.
I'm sorry, would you please say it one more time, Silke? Just one more time. It's so important.
I can't say it enough. It's really be true to yourself. That helps. And I've seen fantastic surprises over time in just doing this. So I know I couldn't reduce it to one tip, but I leave it there.
No, I think I'll sum it up for you. Be courageous and lead by example, right? I mean, and just spending time with you. I mean, it's obvious that that's who you are, and it's what you believe. When you see something that needs to happen, you're going to do what's good for the benefit of the team, and you're going to lead the way. And that's such an important thing. And to give you a compliment, I mean, that's not something you can teach, right? That's really who you are as a person. And I think we've had the opportunity to learn a lot about who you are as a person, and it's a pretty beautiful thing. I mean, I wish there were more people in the world with what you bring to the table. So I really admire the gifts that you have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Alena, what about you? You made some
Yeah, Adam, I think I would like to give a tip from the internal change agent's perspective, right? And a lot of times, as internal change agent, what I experience, a lot of people are waiting for this perfect mandate for transformation, right? Someone will come like a prince and tell them, now it's time, and you have the mandate and you can change the organization, right? It will never happen, right? So what you really need is more like ask for forgiveness, not permission, right? There will be never a mandate. Just as Silke mentioned, just try, experiment, and then people will then provide feedback and you will apologize, or you will move on, or you will learn, or you will grow your experiment, right? So never wait for a mandate for transformation. Create it for you and be proactive and just think forward how to drive the value with the mandate you just claim for yourself.
I love it. I mean, it sounds like you both said the same thing, and that thing is courage. I love it. You're both amazing, and I really appreciate you taking the time to hang out and talk, and thank you for your grace on the reschedule. Alena, if people need to connect with you, or if they'd like to, where can they do that?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn, right? Happy to provide any thoughts on LinkedIn, or of course, if you're interested in our Agile coach role position, just apply.
Excellent. Silke, what about you?
Same as Alena. I'm best reachable via LinkedIn, and also keep the community up to date, what we are busy with, which roles are opening up. So really keen to connect via LinkedIn.
All right, Alena, Silke, thank you so much for the time, and we will see you soon.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. The entire team at Scaled Agile is focused on helping you and your enterprise work differently and build the future. If you find this content valuable, please tell your colleagues and friends and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. To share your suggestions for the show, just drop us a line at podcast@scaledagile.com. I'm Adam Mattis. See you next time.